Assessment Committee. As you know from last night, we were reviewing the recommendations from the different departments and the mayor's recommendation from their meetings. But the first order of business, I'd like to call on our Vice Chairman, Trey Gooch, for approval of the May 9th meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have read the minutes and find them to be appropriate. Move to accept the minutes as presented.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is public comments. We have had no one sign up for public comments tonight. Before we get into the review process, I have asked an old friend to come up, and if y'all indulge me for a minute, I'd like to ask Mike Curtis to come up. Mike works for OIT. We had a couple questions last night concerning our flyovers, and Mike is well qualified to answer those. In just a moment or two, he'll take care of that for us. Thank you for coming, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Chairman said, I'm Mike Curtis. I'm the GIS manager for Rutherford County, and I work out of the information technology, and it's my understanding y'all had some extra questions about GIS and imagery and how we use it. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Main thing was the difference between the two and why we were having two different flyovers. Why the
Are you talking about the pictometry with
right,
the assessor's office? Okay.
Right.
The difference between the two is twofold. One is that how it is used, and two is how it's acquired. The oblique imagery that the property assessor uses with their mass appraisal system is taken from a altitude of 2,000 to 2,400 feet above ground level, and it's at an oblique angle, and it allows the appraisers to be able to see what type of changes are to structures. And what we use in GIS is what's called orthoimagery, and it is shot from straight down from an elevation of between 9,000 and 10,000 feet. And that data is used by multiple departments within our county, everything from public safety to stormwater to planning and engineering, and also by two different data sharing partners, CUD and the City of Murfreesboro, which cover 2/3 of that cost for that project. Is that what y'all are looking for?
Why are there two departments that do somewhat similar things?
Again, it's...
In other words, why isn't GIS, for example, under property assessor?
At one time, the GIS department under OIT handled the pictometry contract, but under the Mayor Burgess administration, it was decided that the property assessor needed to manage that. You may want to talk to the property assessor about that. I don't know, the details I was not privy to. It was just taken away from us and given to him.
Okay. I wasn't aware that he was going to be here, so I was going to do a little bit of homework in fairness, and then was going to follow up. So I will likely have follow-up questions. The basic question is are there any inefficiencies in having a GIS department and a property assessor who do basically the same thing? I mean, the property assessor has to do it, as I understand it. Do you have to do it? And if you do, is there a statutory mandate? And kind of how does that work? What's the context?
We maintain the data that the property assessor uses that is spatial in nature. We keep the servers updated, we keep the software updated, we provide them training so that they can do their two mappers can do their job. They have two people that do mapping. The Planning Commission has half a dozen or more people that do mapping. They rely on us also. So we're kind of like at the most basic level, if you have a service technician in IT that comes to fix your computer, we're kind of the spatial specialists that help them do their job spatially. And so we're specialized in that area versus just the mappers at the property assessor. All they do is map parcels.
So if I could interject, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So I was talking to Mike Curtis, Commissioner Irvin, earlier today about this because I too wanted a explanation because I wanted to make sure that we weren't being redundant or repetitive within two different departments trying to do the same thing. And Mike, I want you to explain the reason why the assessor's flyover is different than it is for GIS because of your need for the type of data you're collecting via the flyover for first responders and planning and engineering and those things versus the assessor's office that is using it to measure real estate. So if you could describe just briefly the flyover, the technique is different because what they're visually taking photographs of is for a different purpose. Because if you could explain that might help Mr. Irvin's question.
A brief example of how the data is used differently with the two different processes would be, say somebody builds onto their house a screened-in porch. For us, it's going to look like a rectangle, and it's going to give us that data for, like, say, stormwater, to be able to see what's an impervious surface, an amount of impervious surface, and the only way to really get a good accurate measurement that is by an orthophoto based on the geometry involved. With the property assessor, they want to know whether it is air-conditioned space or open space that's just a screened-in porch. And the only way to tell that would be from an oblique image or sending somebody out there. And so the property assessor uses the oblique imagery to determine that, whereas we use the ortho imagery to determine the impervious surface. And those also are done with two different types of flights.
So if I can interject, the oblique image that the assessor is doing is statutorily required. So that was, you asked about a statutory requirement, so I contacted Mr. Denami today, and he said absolutely, it's a statutory requirement for the property assessor to use oblique imagery.
Right, got that, I understand.
And the square footage for things like stormwater calculations is also statutorily required as part of the stormwater collection process.
Is that what you do? The stormwater is what you do?
We collect the data and we provide it to the stormwater people at planning, as an example.
How often do you do yours? Your flyovers?
We fly once a year, and it does not only that, but it also keeps track of the growth that we have.
Okay, so once a year, and how often does the assessor do it, if you happen to know?
In the past, when we used to use pictometry, when we would run it, it would be every other year.
Okay, I may have additional questions, and I'll follow up with Mr. Curtis directly, if you'll provide your contact.
Yeah.
Because I have additional questions, but we'll sort it out. Thank you.
I'll be happy to give you my number on the way out. I'll come over there and.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you very much for coming by.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
You're recognized.
Essentially, from what I'm hearing is one department takes a picture from one angle, one takes another picture from another angle, separate angle. I guess what I'm trying to find is, will we not find a way to streamline that and have merge the departments some way to where one department takes a picture from each angle and analyzes it instead of paying two different departments to look at separate? You're both researching imagery. So at this point, it only comes down to the initial picture.
Yeah, again, it goes back to how that imagery is captured. One is at a much lower altitude with a different flight pattern than the other. We could find somebody that would do both, but we would require a competitive bid process in order to come up with the best bang for the buck. We currently use a GSA pricing. The current methodology that the property assessor uses is not done that way.
But could you not analyze both pictures. So we just have to find each company to do the different shot like you're talking about to get the two pictures and only have one department analyzing both photos.
Well, the appraisers are the ones that use the oblique imagery, and they're under the authority of the property assessor. The planimetric data that we provide goes to multiple departments and multiple agencies outside of the county as data sharing partners.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to finally get back into our regular agenda, and the first department we're going to call up is Circuit Court. One thing is y'all come up, please state your name, your department, and also sometime during the discussion whether you agree with the mayor's recommendation or not. Thank you.
My name is Melissa Harrell. I'm the Circuit Court Clerk, and I agree with the mayor's recommendations.
You've got very little increase. Did you add any personnel?
No, sir.
So basically what you're seeing is the raises that the mayor is proposing.
Yes, sir. We stay on the budget with the HR, with the county.
Any questions for Ms. Harrell from the committee? Had a chance to look at these. Melissa, basically what we're doing, if you agree with the mayor's recommendation and we do not have a motion to make a change, then we're going to add this, the mayor's recommendation, to our approved agenda. So seeing no objection from the committee, we will add this as approved, the mayor's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Y'all have a nice evening.
All right. Next in line is Circuit Court Judge. I don't see Darrell out there. Can you cover that for us, Michael?
They have no new positions in their budget. The only change is a reclassification for law clerks if a law clerk passes the bar exam. Other than that, they have no changes. And it was my understanding that after we met with them that they agreed with the mayor's recommendation.
And I spoke with Judge Atwood, and she did concur that that was the case.
Okay. Any questions for Michael or the mayor on this particular budget? Hearing none, we'll also take the mayor's recommendation for the Circuit Court Judge budget, and we'll be moving on to general sessions. Andre? All right.
Good to see you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andre Christman. I'm the Senior Judicial Commissioner with the General Sessions Court. We've also met with Mayor Carr and also the Finance Director, and we are in agreement with the budget as amended by the County Mayor. And we were glad to take any questions you may have, or Michael will be glad to. Very good.
Most of what I'm seeing is the pay increases. Have you added any personnel or switched anybody over from part-time to full or anything like that?
No, no. I'm exempt, so.
as I've said before, most of the things that I've seen changing this was the wages and salaries where we're giving the increase for our employees. Any questions from the committee on this budget? If not, we'll also add this one to our approved side and move on to the drug court. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, next up is the drug court.
Good evening. I'm Lachelle Ricks, Director of the Recovery Court, and we agree and accept the mayor's recommendations for the budget.
Yours is also flat. Have you got any additional people added, anything out of the way other than the raises we're giving our employees?
We did not ask for any new personnel. We did ask for 2 reclassifications. We had 2 counselors who obtained their licensure, and we wanted to reclass them to therapist.
So you had a large decrease in data processing equipment. So that was something you purchased last year?
Yes, we did.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? My question is for the mayor. Mayor, me and you talked a couple of years ago about their housing not being efficient or not being up to, and I'm looking at the budget right here. Is that building coming out of general fund? Or you're not adding it to this budget?
I'm gonna let Michael
Okay.
That is coming out of our capital projects fund. And so currently, right now, I think that design work is still being done.
It's almost complete.
But the construction, the design and the construction will not be in the general fund. It'll be in our capital projects fund.
So these building improvements, do we need to take that entire amount out of the budget? Went from 18, well, let me, hold on, I'm wrong. It's got 0 balance, and I'm sorry. Got 85,000, we're down to 75. I apologize.
Good.
I'm good.
And then her data processing equipment went down because of some grant funds. And so that was you see that there's several grants. She has almost all of Ms. Ricks's budget is grant funds. And so a lot of that went down because we've spent those grant funds. It wasn't a reduction in property tax dollars or anything like that.
And Chairman, I know that you're interested in that, the expansion of that facility because of your role on the opioid board. I can tell you that the plans and the engineering for the expansion of the recovery court, we're about ready to let that contract to bidders to begin that construction. So we expect to do that in just a matter of couple of weeks, 3 weeks, just if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, it's just, if we don't have space, we can't add more people.
That's correct, and so we're very close to final drawings and to letting that out for bid.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions?
Quick question, line 399, other contracted services. Can you outline what that is? Just for info.
Lachelle, that's going to be the AverHealth.
That's our AverHealth, that's our drug screening, our water, and our shred box. That's our drug screen testing, our water, and our shred box. So the majority of it goes to our drug testing.
And is there, maybe somebody could help me understand the relationship between the opioid folks and the drug court and the funding as it moves. Are they totally separate, or are they? I just want to try to understand kind of the different funding sources.
Opioid is completely separate from this budget right here. And then I will go ahead and point out, on your sheet, it doesn't differentiate this, but the majority of that $399, a lot of that is grant funds through our EBJP grant, our DUIEP grant. And so a lot of that, some of that increase you're seeing is due to some grant fund increases that line up with the state budget as well.
The concern from the opioid board is if we decided we wanted to add positions, we've got no place to house them. And that's why the question, I assume, is that right, Chairman? Yes.
Yeah,
At least on my end it is.
Yeah, I was just stepping up maybe another 10,000 feet, trying to get a better understanding of how, the funding for the opioid board, this funding, are there any other organizations that, provide funds in that same direction that are either under the commission or otherwise benefit from the commission's efforts? Just trying to get an understanding of the overall picture.
Opioid funds has its own major function that will cover, I believe it's on the 20, I believe it's next Monday that will cover that. So it'll have its own function. And then most of LaChelle's budget is made up of grants, but they're almost all state grants. And so as those grants come and go, so do the personnel and contracted services. And a lot of why you see the contracted services so high is because we don't want to hire a full-time person that we can't continue that funding. So we do a lot of contracting with some professional organizations so that, because when that funding ends, so does that service that we're going to offer, unless this body were to pick that up. But so far, these grants that we've gotten in the last several years are continuing and in some cases increasing.
Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none, we're going to move this on to our approved column. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next one up is the other admin of justice, which is probation.
Hello, I'm Kelly Haley with the Probation Recovery Services. I have also met with the mayor and Director Smith and would agree with their recommendation for our budget, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that I could.
Have any questions for the director or for the mayor on this probation budget?
And I will say, because you had asked, we did not request any new positions in our budget for this year.
Hearing no objection, we will move hers over to the approved column, since I hear no changes, and move on to the next one. Thank you, Kelly.
Sir.
Next is Chancery Court. Welcome.
I'm Adam Dodd. I'm the Chancery Court Clerk and Master, and we agree with the mayor's recommendation. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Adam, did y'all add any people?
No, sir.
No reclassification, anything like that?
We have a long-term employee who is our accountant. She's retiring at the end of June after 30 years, and so the max hire-in rate for her replacement is significantly lower than what she makes, and so we budgeted that max. So our numbers are off, but as far as a reclassification, that would be the only example.
Guys, you've seen the request there. I don't see any significant changes other than the increase that the mayor has recommended for all our employees. Any questions from the committee on this account? Hearing none, we'll also move this one to our approved column. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks. Everybody have a good night.
All right, next is the Juvenile Court.
All right, my name is Travis Lampley. I'm the juvenile court judge. I met with the mayor, the director, and I'm in agreement with their recommended budget. We did have some requests of reclassifications, and how many positions did we decide on now? 2 new positions plus a reclass.
What are your 2 positions doing, Judge?
Court aides.
Before they were what? You said they were reclassed. Were they part-time or what?
Well, I'm going for, yes, they were part-time.
Okay.
And a reclass of 1 administrative support, 2 moving to a 3.
The main move there was 1 law clerk and 1 court aide, and then we eliminated the part-time to help fund that, to try to offset those 2 new positions that the judge requested.
Right.
And this is still a very tight budget. Any comments, questions from our committee? Had a moment or 2 to look at this. By the way, they look at this at home too before we come here, but hearing no recommendations, we're also going to add this to the approved column with the mayor's recommendation. Thank you, Judge.
Perfect. Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay, next up is the district attorney.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Jennings Jones. I am the district attorney. I have received the mayor's recommendation and I'm pleased to agree. Happy to answer any questions if you have them. We have requested 1 new position. That will be for the review of body-worn camera footage that will be generated by the new cameras added with the county, Rutherford County Sheriff's Department.
Jennings, I was wondering, the person that reviews, and of course you just said he'd review for the Sheriff's Department. What about, say, Paul's? They've got some body cams, or any county agency that had the body cams. That's something y'all could pick up?
Yes, sir. We've added 3 people to the office to review body camera. We're requesting from city, county, and state a total of 3 people. The person who is hired on from the county will review any body camera footage generated by a county agency that is necessary for law enforcement and prosecution of their cases.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were covering all our bases there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's your main increase that you've got?
Yes, sir, it is.
Budget. Any questions from the committee or our AG? Hearing none, we're going to move this to our approved column. Thank you very much for your time.
Commission, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, thank you, sir.
Okay, next is the Office of the Public Defender. Gerald?
Good afternoon. I'm Gerald Melton. I've been your public defender for the last 2 or 3 years. Met with the mayor and with other people in the county. Appreciate the mayor's recommendation. We accept that and ask for approval.
One thing I want to mention, by state statute, anytime we give an increase to the AG, we also have to give at least, what is it, 75%?
Yes, 75%.
Increase. Now, I don't know that he's adding anybody to review body cams. I don't think so, but he will have, reflect in his budget, an increase because of the increase to the AG's department.
That's right.
Will you see that in there?
And that's in the budget right now, and we've temporarily put that into a column which would permit us to hire part-time personnel.
Mr. Chairman, quick question.
Please.
How many public defenders do we have?
We have a total of 14, and two of those are locally funded. The others are funded by the state.
And do you happen to know, this may not be a fair question, do you know the average caseload?
I cannot give you a number. I can tell you that we handle too many.
Okay. All right.
I can get that number. I just don't know.
Just curious on how many cases that we might have.
We are handling far in excess
of the recommended caseload per attorney per year, without a doubt.
Okay, so the county provides 2, and the state provides
the others.
12.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And to clarify the county funding, the county provides funding for an assistant public defender in total that serves the juvenile court here in the county. And then the other locally funded position is through a 1250 assessment. It's a tax assessment on all cases that go through the court. And we use those 1250 funds to generate that pays another salary.
Is there any kind of state standard or any kind of a standard, how many cases determine how many defenders we should have?
That's been debated for years.
Okay,
and we have attempted through the legislature to get them to adopt a standard which would generate attorneys in each office, and we've been unsuccessful in doing that so far. Public defenders across the state are just shorthanded.
Yeah. And how does the state come up with how many they're going to provide?
It's a haphazard.
Okay.
It's haphazard.
And so the only way to get more would be if the state were to provide more, or if the county would provide more.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. And what the state will do from time to time is they will put in the state budget, for example, 10 assistant public defenders, and leave it to the 32 public defenders to decide among themselves how to ration out those 10 bodies. Believe you me, we've had some lively discussions through the years on that.
And is the line 103 assistance, is that the representation of the pay for the public defenders?
Yes, sir.
And is that all 14 or just
the county?
Just the county part.
Does that also include this 75% of what? Okay. So that's also in that line item. Any other questions? Chairman Harris.
Yeah. I want to follow up on what he said. All right, since we're growing 7 people a day and our population is taking off, and that's going to be more crime, more work for you. So that burden falls on Rutherford County to give you more help. The state won't look at growing counties and give you another position?
I think Rutherford County may be finding itself in a period of transition. When you look at metropolitan Nashville, you look at Shelby County, you look at Hamilton County, and you look at Knox County. Those counties have traditionally funded a number of assistant public defenders in addition to the ones that the state furnishes. We have not done that in this county yet. We may be approaching a point where Rutherford County, in order to keep up with the needs in the future, may have to do that, or I shouldn't say may have to, but where those requests will be forthcoming in order for us to do the job that we need to do, following the examples of what we see in those other metropolitan counties.
So
and that's just due to the population growth that we have.
You feel confident that your budget is adequate enough to take care of all the needs of Rutherford County for this coming year?
We'll get by. Yeah, it could, Mr. Harris, did I tell you that we could use more? Absolutely. But we get by, and that's why, we accept the mayor's recommendation.
You said you would be able to provide the caseload
Yes, sir, I
synopsis?
can generate those numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to see the numbers also, and also kind of what the norm is for what's an acceptable range for an attorney or a public defender to represent, and then compare that to the 14, so we can get kind of a sense as to where over time we need to go. You see where I'm headed?
Yes, sir. Let me spend some time doing that, and then I'll be happy to come before the commission at some other time and present those numbers for future planning purposes.
You could email it, start with an email there, and we still got follow-up questions. Of course, we'll contact you. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to get that information. I'd like to see the information on adding one more public defender.
Okay.
I'd like to see that. Can I hold judgment on this? Mr. Chairman, I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do here. So if
you want to make
I
a
want
change,
to look
you
at
could.
this budget again, do I make a motion to look at it again, or do we just revisit it some other time and just go with the?
We've got days that we will review, and I would suggest doing it then. You might give us a heads up. Hey, this is review day. I'll request it. That way, we can notify Gerald or whoever you might want to have there. That'll give us some time. And what are those open dates, Michael?
Thursday, May 30th, we have a budget review where y'all approve it for publication. And that's generally where we go back through and y'all can make any final changes y'all want to make before we put it out for publication. And so generally that's kind of when we would do that if y'all wanted more information on something.
And let me add, if I can, Gerald, do you mind stepping aside so it just looks like, see, Chairman Harris? This is his question. So when we sat down with Gerald, the issue did come up of additional staffing for public defenders, and because it's tied to the DA, and there was that 75%, and he stuck it in 40, I think it was about 40,000 is what it came out to, Gerald, wasn't it, in part-time? That was with the understanding that next year, as additional resources for reviewing this video that we were talking about, we told Gerald that it was probably more appropriate at that time to do it. So it's not something that we're just forgetting about. Michael and I and Gerald work out a plan where we probably are going to come next year as a higher priority to give Mr. Melton the additional staff he's requesting. So I just wanted you to know that as you guys consider moving forward with staffing it this year or possibly next year.
And would you be able to have that report by the 30th? Is that possible?
I'll do my best.
Okay, if you can.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're planning on you coming back on the 30th now, if I understand Commissioner Harris and Commissioner Gooks correct.
And if I have any difficulty getting those numbers together, I'll notify the committee in advance.
Sanjay has got a question, and somebody forgot to turn off their phone, so. Sonia, you're recognized. You got a question.
So just a question for Michael and I. If this body chose to do the position this year, would that be a full position plus the money, the 75%, or would that 75% go to fund that position?
The way I understand it would be we would shift there's approximately really close to 40,000 that came as a result of the DAs, and so my recommendation to this body would be if they wanted to add a full position, that we would add the additional approximately $50,000 to $60,000 or so to make it a full position. Would be my recommendation if that's what this body wanted to do.
Just get that number to me as soon as you can. I know you're busy, but I'm trying to help you, I promise.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Any other questions? I appreciate your time, and as always, I appreciate what the county does.
Gerald, hang on just a second. I want to make sure that we don't have anything else. If not seeing anything else, we are going to accept the mayor's recommendation, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Youth Services.
Hi, my name is Tina Bigby. I'm Director of Youth Services, and we agree with the county mayor's recommendation. We did not request any new personnel or reclassifications.
Any questions? Ms. Bigby? But a tighter budget as we've seen. Anything you'd like to say at this time, other than you agree with the mayor's
I agree.
recommendations?
No, sir.
Well, hearing no recommendations coming from the committee, we are going to accept the mayor's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the domestic violence. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sari Green. I am the coordinator for Domestic Violence Court, and I do agree with the mayor's recommendations and happy to answer any questions you all may have.
How many people you have working for you?
Currently, I have a team of 6. 2 of those are the prosecutors for our office, so I have 3 staff members that report to me.
So how many, and I don't know if you know this answer, how many cases do we have?
So I actually pulled a rough guess for the mayor's office from July of 2023 up until late March, and what we reported was roughly 715 cases just for that time frame.
So you feel confident that you have what you need to take care of this department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're adding 1 employee, is that correct?
That's a part-time to a full-time.
Correct. I requested for our part-time to become full-time and somewhat of a reclassification of her position to not only be our receptionist, but also to be an office administrative assistant for us.
Do I hear any comments from the committee or recommendation for a change? Not, we are also going to accept the mayor's recommendation. Thank you, Ms. Green.
Thank you all so much.
Correctional Work Center.
Good afternoon. Bill Cope, Superintendent, Correctional Work Center. After several reviews with our staff, the Work Center Board, and the Mayor, and also Michael, our Finance Director, I present to you our 2024-25 budget. No additional staff, 1 reclass in administration, and outside of salaries, normal inflation, and contract increases, we are only asking for an additional $7,500 to purchase a transmission for one of our transport vans. And I happily agree with the mayor's recommendation.
Other contracted services, is that your food or what is that? Is that, that's not medical too?
That's
or is
both.
It?
That's
Okay.
both the food and the medical.
Okay. I see about 50,000 increase there. I assume that's a contract increase.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
On the medical side.
Medical and food service. Food service is going to be going up too.
Ah, okay.
Can you remind me, do y'all cook there?
We do.
Okay,
We cook for ourselves and juvenile.
Okay. How is your kitchen equipment?
Relatively good shape, considering. We are working with county maintenance now to have a new contract with a group that's going to be coming in and doing regular maintenance, but for the most part, pretty good shape.
Okay, I remember, I thought I remember something coming up recently in purchasing where it might have been some kind of, it might have been for the sheriff's office, I can't remember.
It probably wasn't us, but.
Okay, what line item covers your maintenance and repair of your kitchen equipment?
Well, that will probably be in
336.
Yep, and 334 under maintenance agreements too. So.
Okay.
You have 336, which is maintenance and repair services to equipment. You have 335, which is maintenance and repair services to the building, and then you have 334, which is maintenance agreements. So it's a little bit of all three of those.
Okay, thank you.
We've got about, and including your pay increases, about 170,000 increase, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the director? Hearing none and seeing no motions to make a change, we will also accept the mayor's recommendation and move along, add this to our approved column. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you all.
Okay, next is the juvenile detention budget.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Duke. I am the director of the Juvenile Detention Center. I do accept the mayor's recommendation. I do not have any changes to personnel, and I, as Superintendent Cope just discussed, did have some increases to some contracting for medical and our food services, and I will answer any other questions you may have.
And while they're looking, line item 709, data processing, you've got $178,708. Can you explain that, please?
So the system that allows our doors to open and our intercoms to function correctly, basically our central control is at an end of life is what the company has called it. It's an analog system. I have begun asking, even back when Mayor Ketchron was in office, to upgrade this system. It's something that I've discussed with OIT, and it's currently functional and working. We are having some minor issues with our intercom systems. So I'd like to get ahead of it and not wait until something malfunctions or breaks completely. I don't know if you need any other information regarding that, but that's the short story.
Mr. Harris.
How many how many children we have right now in juvenile?
I believe today we had 15.
And what is your capacity?
We have 64 beds. Historically, we have used 48 of those, which are actually one-man cells. Those additional 16 that we don't generally use were set up as a dorm situation, and we're using that area, or those two areas, as programming space.
So from the last year, have we seen an increase or about the same?
Since COVID, we have seen a decrease.
Decrease? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Just a quick question. The 178, is that for a new system? Is that what we're doing? Or is that the Band-Aid? I'm trying to get a sense.
Oh, no, it's to upgrade the current system to get it to where it needs to be. And the Correctional Work Center and the Juvenile Detention Center were built sort of in conjunction with each other, so we have the same system as they do, and they have already updated their system. So everything that they do, we're generally about a year or two behind them.
So this will eliminate the challenges you're having?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yes, sir. On line item 160, guards, how many guards are down there?
So, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm cutting in and out. The guards is actually our corporals and one teacher. I don't know if you were specifically wanting to ask about detention officers. That's 164. So we have, I believe, 6 corporals and 1 teacher, although, yes, 6 corporals and 1 teacher are in that line item.
Okay, and so 164 attendants, is that what I would probably consider a guard or a...
Yes, sir, and there are 19 of those total.
And how many, is that, excuse me, is that 1 captain, 1 lieutenant?
Yes.
And how many sergeants?
5.
5 sergeants. Thank you.
Lynn, I've got a question just on your procedure for generating your budget. We've changed your what you do a little bit by having a board that oversees juvenile now. Did the juvenile board have input on this budget before you and the mayor came to an agreement here, or how did that work this year?
So this year, just based on scheduling, I actually met with the mayor first and then took what we had discussed to the board, and the board had all of the information that you have except for salaries, because we had pulled those out, and they agreed with my recommendation and were pleased with what the mayor had also approved.
Commissioner Johnson.
You have some people out there from different counties, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the ratio for Rutherford County? How many?
At the last board meeting, we had 15. 6 of those were Rutherford County, and the remainder was out of county.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chairman Phillips.
Ms. Duke, does that $3.5 million include revenue that you might produce from the contracts from your outside services?
So all of the contract monies that come in go back into the general fund for the county to use as they see fit, not into our budget.
So the cost, the 3.5 includes the cost for those contract services?
I don't know that I understand that question.
That's correct. So the cost for her to run her entire department or the entire juvenile services is in there, and we do have some offsetting revenue from those contracted services. But yes, for her to house, whether it's, kids from our county or another county, all the expenses are in this budget, and then there are some offsetting revenues that are in the general fund.
Michael, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but where does that show up in our budget?
The expenditures are not broken out, so you're not going to be able to see the expenditures on a per child basis or a per kid basis. But there is a revenue line that I can pull. If you give me a few minutes, I can pull and see. That'll be on the revenue side, and I believe that's going to be on tab 3 in your book to see the revenue for what she brings in. But I think based on what's in your book, you're not going to be able to see the exact revenue. It's going to be lumped in another category.
Just trying to understand the revenue that Ms. Duke's department creates, how much compared to the $3.5 million? I just kind of was wondering.
It'll take me a few minutes to get that, but I can tell you it is not enough to cover her budget. I can tell you that.
I didn't expect it would be, but she is creating some revenue for the county, and I just wondered what that was compared to the expenses of that department. It's not a big deal. You can get back with me.
Okay.
Just one more question. Of the population of 15, is that pretty consistent? Or what's like a fluctuation? You said you have a capacity of 64.
So even when there was a different structure in the court system, we would never have had 64 young people.
Right.
When the building was built in 2008, I believe, the building was to it was the big push at that time was to make sure that it was built large enough and with enough flexibility to not have to be in a situation to go through that process all over again. It was supposed to last at least 20 years is what
Right.
the thought process was. The most that I recall, and I don't want to be quoted, but I believe that the most that we had on a regular basis would have been about 35.
And that was, but say like now, today's times, or like say this year and last year, it does. Is it average 15 or is it closer to 35?
No, it probably would have been in the 20 to 25 range.
And one more question. So is it typically about half or just a little less than half is Rutherford County and the other half is contracted from other counties?
I'd say so.
Okay.
And but also just keep in mind that detaining the young people isn't the only thing that we do. There's also young people that come in and are processed that are not detained, and that information is shared with public safety, and they don't ever go back into the back for housing, but that does require personnel to be down there and to address those, get those court dates set, and get them back out the door.
Okay, thank you so much.
Chairman, I have that number for Chairman Phillips. For last year, we received $370,905. And for this year, we've received a little over $270,000 as of April.
That's a pretty good offset. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee from Stu? Any recommendations for changes or additions? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's proposal and move to our next item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is fire rescue.
Good evening. My name is Josh Sanders. I'm Assistant Chief Fire Marshal for Rutherford County Fire Rescue. After meeting with the Mayor and Director Smith, we are happy to accept their recommendation.
Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized.
Line 189, the increase, other salaries and wages.
So that large increase is going to be due to the lift of the pay table because there's approximately 86 or 87 in there. I'm looking at Sonia too. Yeah. There's a little over 80 people in there without me pulling the exact personnel list. And so the largest increase there is just due, that line item went up 4.84%, and we're raising, giving an approximate 5% or proposing an approximate 5% raise this year. That line item also includes one new position. But that's that's what that line item, the major increase was due to the raise in the pay table.
Josh, would you mind explaining the new position you're requesting?
Absolutely, sir. That new position is for an inventory clerk or a supply manager. So that person would be responsible for managing all uniform issuance and tracking, turnout gear, supply delivery and ordering, basically being a logistics manager to support the growing need of our organization.
And then Mr. Chairman, on line 718, motor vehicles.
Yeah, that 718 is going to be for the purchase of a new fire apparatus.
For what?
The fire truck. Yes, sir.
Which fire truck? Sorry, which fire truck?
So at this point, this truck would be to continue to supplement aging apparatus. And so this would be right now we're looking at a ladder truck, which we do not currently have anywhere in the county for the county response. And so this would be to supplement aging apparatus and also give us some additional capabilities with that new apparatus.
Is this the one that was for the grant? Is this the grant one?
So this is separate. They applied for a grant that would have gave them a ladder platform truck, as I understand it.
Correct.
That was what the grant was written for. And after speaking with Chief Farley today, I believe this is not a platform, and I don't know the technical difference, but it was something
So
smaller.
it would be what we call a stick. It's just a ladder without a bucket on the end of it. Yeah. Two separate apparatus types, basically.
Was that for the work supposedly at the VA hospital? Is that why this was being requested?
That is part of the advantage or the need for this apparatus, yes, sir.
When I questioned Chief Farley about this, he stated that that vehicle would not be run for medical calls. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's not our intention, sir.
And then line 724, not a lot of money, but site development.
Josh, that's the Connex
Yeah, site
boxes.
development, it's going to be some improvements, maintenance and improvements to our live fire training facility. Basically, they're Connex boxes, but they're installed in such a way that allows us to do live fire training within them.
Where is your training facility?
That'll be at the Kittrell facility.
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Joshua James, you're recognized. Sorry.
I'd like to ask more about on the line 718. Is that an additional ladder truck in addition to the grant?
So this would be, and we have the flexibility to, if we were to get that grant, to transition those funds to be able to supply a pumper truck as well. So obviously, depending on how the grant plays out, it does give us some flexibility to still meet the needs of our operations. But at this point, yes, the grant is still kind of in pending stages, so we don't know what our status is on that yet. But this would allow us up to that ladder to be able to still purchase one should we not receive that grant.
Well, outside of the VA contract, do we need a ladder truck?
Yes, sir, we absolutely do. So the ladder gives us a lot of flexibility with the residential offsets. Obviously, our homes are getting bigger in many cases. Also gives us some rescue capabilities, some elevated master stream platform, elevated master streams for large fires, help us to control those. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in addition to the additional ladders that carries. Ground ladders gives us a lot of flexibility operations-wise that we don't currently have.
We not save a good portion of this by reaching out to our municipalities who already have several ladder trucks.
As far as mutual aid?
Yes.
Yes, sir, we do that, but they have their own response areas to take care of, and we have to be able to provide that to our response areas as well. That we can't always guarantee that they will be able to provide those.
Are our new facilities going to be long enough to hold these?
Yes, sir, we anticipate so based on the spec.
I still kind of look at this line as saying that that's kind of an extra expense that we might not need to budget in when we're waiting to find out on a grant to do one. Budget for two, essentially, when we really only need the one for the VA.
Well, arguably, we need it in many places in the county, but the VA is a part of the justification for that grant for sure, as being a federal facility, and it also would be well needed out there as well. But we do have needs all over the county for such a piece of equipment.
Mr. Harris, and then Commissioner
Mayor Carr, what is the situation on our next public health building?
So the next public health building before the PBA is the Plainview facility. As you know, Commissioner, we moved that from Christiana to Plainview to give us closer proximity to I-24. We, with our public health and safety buildings, Chief Farley and Josh, made a case for we need greater access to 24, especially that corridor from Church Street or 231 southeast to the Beach Grove or Bell Buckle area. I believe we're scheduled to break ground on that before July 1, if I'm not mistaken. Bids come back next month? So there you go. Bids come back next month, and of course that'll be a PBA project. And we didn't put in this budget the manning of that station, as you'll notice, if that's where you're going. And the reason we wanted to find out is, again, this goes back to the conversation we had last night where we talked about those 4 points, and that fourth point being to what extent does this budget affect future budgets. And Michael and I both agreed, along with Chief Farley and Josh, that we might have to do some tweaking on the manpower at that particular facility depending on what our budget allows for next year. So we're on track to build it, to staff it. We just might have to make some tweaks in the staffing, and we'll know that next year.
I guess my other question to you is, and I don't know if you have this information, but as long as I've been a commissioner, there's always been some type of grants that we get to where basically we hire 5 firemen, we pay for 2 or something like that. And I think they're in either 3-year or 5-year increments. So is any of those grants coming up this year that you know of, or next year?
To my knowledge, that those are continually voted on by by Congress for approval. To my knowledge, that funding has not been cut off at this point. We have continually put in for those what they're called SAFER grants. Those SAFER grants we've continued to apply for since our last one. I think around 18 or 19, if I remember, Commissioner. We have not been successful in getting another one, but we continue to put in for those.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Johnson.
Okay, roughly, the last item here says other equipment of the original budget was 189,280, and this one is 250. So that's basically a 30% increase. Is this equipment replacement that I know it wears out, you know, it doesn't last forever, or is it additional other equipment?
That increase is largely due to the increase in our facilities and the apparatus that we're running. So that equipment, that is specific to fire-related equipment, fire suppression equipment, that will be used to equip the 8 stations that we'll have this coming year, and also for the heavy rescue that the commission allowed us to buy this current budget year, which we're expecting delivery of that in, I believe, December.
I realize that it's not unrealistic because, you know, it doesn't last forever.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. You're correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Phillips.
Just a quick statement. The bucket truck, the ladder trucks are extremely important as we continue to grow as a county because we're building vertically. Now our high schools will be double high schools instead of single level high schools, so it's important that we keep up with those changing times, and this bucket truck could end up saving kids' lives at some point in time, whether it's a fire or some type of a natural emergency of some sort. So this truck is real important for public safety as we go forward, simply because, once again, we're running out of land. The type of land that we need to build our schools on is shrinking, so we're building vertically, and it's a must to be able to service those buildings that we're building.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
Quick question. So Christiana Plainview is funded, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then Del Webb is not anticipated for, what's the time for, or is, I don't know what the time frame is for that and the funding process, because I think for Plainview, I think we've pretty much used all the ARPA. Is that correct?
Yes, it's used up.
Okay, so that uses up that, and that's presumably going to get going pretty soon, I presume, or?
Is your question, what is the status of Del Webb?
Well, it's the timing for Christiana, I presume it's
The timing
year.
for what was Christiana is now Plainview is we will let that out in June, into May, 1st of June, to begin construction in July, on about July timeframe is when we'll begin the construction of the last bit of ARPA money for the public safety buildings, which will be Plainview.
And then the operational money is not in this budget?
That's correct. It'll be in the next, it'll be in the fall, it'll be in the 25-26 budget.
Okay, and then the status for Del Webb or whatever, wherever it ends up?
Right, and the status for Del Webb is we have had a significant development, which I have shared with this body before, in that Smyrna has determined they're now going to extend sewer all the way out to Almaville in about 18 months. And the current Almaville facility, which is a volunteer fire department, is a much more suitable location for a public safety building than the Del Webb, just because of its geographical location and, again, its proximity back to 840. So what Josh, Chief Farley, and myself, and I think some of you we've discussed, I think Chairman Pettis-Reed is aware of this also, we're waiting for that sewer extension, and it also buys the county commission a little bit of time with regard to funding. So it's the timing is working to our advantage, to be quite honest.
Okay, so that's like, that's in the next budget cycle, not this one, is when you would anticipate?
I would say Almaville is probably 2 years out or more.
2 budget, okay.
Yes,
couple budget cycles. Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Any other questions from Commissioner Johnson?
Just for the record, that was a 31.6% increase.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Any other questions from the committee? Commissioner James had a question. You're recognized.
I was wanting to see where line item 399, how that got calculated. What I'm assuming those are the volunteers. What was their budgetary request that came in, and where did we line up with what they were requesting and needed?
I'll defer that question to the mayor and the finance director. We do not, as far as what our budget request is prepared, we do not prepare that. That's usually something that the mayor and the commission will decide on what funding is provided.
Can you repeat your question?
I'm curious to know on the other contracted services, the volunteers,
the volunteer donation,
what their requested amounts were, where we lined up with what they requested.
As of right now, I believe it's $80,000 for each of the 3 remaining left departments. That would be Eagleville, Christiana, and Amaville.
Yes, sir.
But how did we come up to that figure is what I'm trying to, do we just?
I believe they're all the same as last year except Eagleville. I believe the mayor's request just has them all equal. I believe they're all the same as last year, except Eagleville got bumped to 80 with the money falling off from Las Casas, and the request is that they're all equal right now.
Okay, I may have some further questions as I get more technical on it. And then just also to continue on the thought that you had with Commissioner Irvin, I'd appreciate any kind of extra back and forth you can get with the future of Amaville and Del Webb being in my district and right there that you're talking about with the sewer. Just I'd like to kind of keep that communication going so I can keep the timeline going as well.
Okay, Eagleville is not actually a volunteer fire department, is it? Is that not the municipality of Eagleville? Is that correct?
It is. It is a municipality.
Okay, so we're actually donating $80,000 to the municipality, but they cover for us in that area, in the rural areas outside of the Eagleville boundaries, and they are on mutual aid call with us. You know, we said volunteers, and so that's why I was.
Sorry about that. I have it listed on my sheet as volunteer fire department, says my cheat sheet of notes, so sorry about that.
Now we'll get back to our committee again. Any other questions from the committee? Any recommendations for changes? Not, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation as presented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman P.,
Yes, sir.
before we continue, would it not be customary or in a legal way that a non-active member of a committee, we should need to suspend the rules to let them speak or question someone on the committee if they're not a sitting member?
Well, I did that as a matter of courtesy from a commissioner that's come to our committee. He had actually called me before with some questions, and I told him if he came to the committee after he heard the presentation and you, as a committee, had all your questions answered, that I would allow him to speak. Now, if this committee would rather not allow that, we can vote to suspend the rules in the future to allow someone to speak or not, but we haven't done that in the past that I'm aware of. Now, I'll lay that back on the committee. If you prefer to suspend the rules to allow one of the other commissioners to speak, we can do that, but I've been to many different committees myself and spoke that I'm not a member of, and I don't recall ever having to have the rules suspended.
I think the private act allows that as long as the chairman acknowledges or recognizes the member. Yeah.
But again, I'll bend to y'all's desire. If you
I don't
desire.
really care one way or the other, but I just thought we ought to act by the Robert's Rule of Orders. And maybe I'm wrong. I've sat on the budget committee 5 years in a row, and I've never had a sitting commissioner ask questions without being recognized or suspending the rules. Maybe I'm in the wrong. It's just new for me. And I don't care how many questions he asks.
Right, right. Well, like I said, if y'all would, as a committee, would prefer to suspend the rules to allow other commissioners to come to before us and speak, so be it. Personally, I'm going to allow any commissioner to come that requests to speak until y'all tell me different.
Yeah, I said private act, but I think it's your own commission rules, I believe is what it is.
It's the committee rules you're referring to, Mark?
Yeah, the commission rules is what it is.
It's 7C.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
It's the reference, I believe, is 7C, where they're open to the public, duly elected members can be recognized. Non-members, upon the request of a committee member, an affirmative vote, majority vote, may appear before the committee. You can't interfere with the committee. That's what the standing rules say.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right.
But I'm happy with the chairman's approach.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, building codes. Welcome.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Tanya Bale, and I am the Director of the Building Codes Department. And I have met with the Mayor, and I'm happy to accept his recommendation.
Tanya, first of all, you do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
As you're aware, and most of the commissioners are aware, there's going to be a law coming to where we raise our school facilities tax to $1.50. Now, when you transitioned this, I think it was 2 years ago when I had gotten it changed to $1 square foot, and you had to do all that. Do we have enough people to do what we got to do? Because I know there's going to be a big transition period. Problem is, we just don't know when it starts. But it's going to start within the next 2 or 3 months. So we're asking, do you have enough people to do the transition that's coming with this new law?
So we'll manage. Yeah, we do.
You'll be fine?
Yes.
Okay.
You did add one position, correct?
I did add a position. The position I asked for, requested this year, was a zoning official for the zoning enforcement division of my department. I currently have 3 employees in that division. I have 2 inspectors and then 1 administrative assistant that does all the legal letters and the legal correspondence. Currently, we have About 280 active cases, ongoing active cases every month. They open, they close every month, but active cases sits right at about 275. I have always overseen that department, and I review just about every single case as they come through our department, especially as they progress towards going to court or any kind of progressive action that we need to take. So it's become a lot, and it takes up a lot of my time. So I am respectfully asking for someone to oversee zoning enforcement, as the county grows, it is definitely becoming a far bigger job for me than I can handle.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize.
Thank you. So you issue permits, and then at the other end would be the certificate of occupancy? That's
so zoning enforcement is, we enforce the zoning ordinance.
So I'm in the wrong department again, sorry.
No, we also do that.
Oh, okay.
Zoning enforcement is just a portion of what we do. It's property maintenance, and we also enforce the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So, and I have 3 employees that do that. The rest of our department is associated with new construction.
Okay, cool. And this is kind of a follow-up on the new law that Chairman Harris mentioned.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to get a handle on this. Okay, so the permit's issued, and now that currently they're paying, it up front, most of them, I think. Okay, and then we're going to be going to a payment at the back end, basically.
Correct.
Okay. And do you have any stats in terms of the time period between permit issuance and CO issuance?
So that really depends on the size of the house and the builder. If it's a custom build, it can take 10, 12, 14 months.
Okay.
If it's a builder that's in there knocking them out, it can take as little as 6, 7 months.
Okay. And then is there court? I heard about this in steering. I was confused, I'll say. And so I was trying to figure out, is it possible to get a CO issued without paying all the fees?
Currently?
Well, I don't know the answer to the question. Is it possible to not pay, the dollar or whatever, and still get a CO issued?
Per square foot. So the SFT was established in July 1st of 21. So this is year 3. The law was changed right before they adopted the County Powers Relief Act. The law was changed to allow us to collect 50% of the fee up front and 50% of it on the back end prior to the CO being issued. Since July of 21, we have found that 95% of the permits that we issue, the applicants choose to pay the entire 100% upfront. So to answer your question, it's really not and the ones that didn't pay it up front were typically apartment complexes, which we keep track of, and before they issue a CO, we'll collect the second payment. But to answer your question, it's not a problem we've had because we haven't had to. Like I said, 95% of our applicants pay up front.
I imagine that most lenders would require, all the liens and everything be cleared at some point before closing or at closing. So I'm trying to figure out, is it possible to issue a CO without having paid the fee? And if it is, I'll understand a little bit more. I'm just trying to understand. Okay, in terms of the timeline, in terms of what happens, in your office, I'm just trying to understand the procedures. So there's the permit, goes through the process. Under new law, then presumably the full amount gets paid and then the CO is issued? Or can you issue the CO and then pay the full amount?
Okay.
Is that possible?
So please understand that I can only control the permits that are issued in Rutherford County.
Fair enough.
So I can control that we will not issue a certificate of occupancy without the entire fee being paid. However, we only, and this is a guess, so please don't quote me, but we only control about 25% of the single-family dwellings that are issued in Rutherford County. Rutherford County wide. The rest of those are consumed with the city of Murfreesboro, the town of Smyrna, Laverne, and Eagleville, of which I have no control over who issues a CO and when they get issued.
Okay, I'm understanding a little better. Okay, so different jurisdictions. So it's not one CO process, it's
Correct.
5.
Right. And we
or however many.
Additionally, we don't have, I don't believe I've ever had a call from a financial institution or anybody else that's financing a home that's looking for a CO. That CO, that certificate of occupancy, just does not appear to be the gold document that it used to be. And I don't know what the reason for that is. I don't know if it's because people are more people are paying cash and they don't need it financed. More people, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of corporates, corporations that are coming into Rutherford County and building to rent, and so they don't need financing. There's a lot of people that are building on their own family land, and they're using their own money, so they don't need a CO. So I don't know the specific reason why people aren't. When we do a final inspection, the inspectors will come back to the office, complete all the paperwork, and the CO is then ready for the applicant to come pick up. And I can tell you that less than half of them come pick them up. And I don't know why, because they're there for them, they just don't come pick them up.
This is all very helpful. Now, to kind of get back to the budget side of it, in terms of the timing between the permit and the collection, of the new tax, or assuming somebody didn't continue to pay it up front, they presumably could. Okay, then that's probably 6 months to a year, give or take. Mm-hmm. In a very large home, might be larger, might be longer.
Mm-hmm. And commercial will be much longer.
Oh, okay. What's the sense for commercial?
That really depends on the commercial project. A church can take a couple of years, and an industrial complex could also take 18 months, years.
Okay. No, I'm trying to get a sense for just the timing so I can think through the revenue stream. So that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Any other questions from Ms. Bell? Hearing none, are there any recommendations for changes to the mayor's recommendation? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation for building codes. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Okay, next up is the Ambulance Service Fund.
Ease into the moment. Brian Gaither, EMS Director. We've met with the mayor and Michael, and we agree with the mayor's recommendations.
Have you got funding for personnel for all the new stations that are coming online this year?
Yes, sir.
You have ambulances enough and personnel?
Enough ambulances and enough positions. Okay. We currently have 12 openings.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I have a question for Michael, actually. Michael, on the revenue page for the ambulance fund, tab 6, what does the finance department do with, when do you charge off unpaid bills? How do we do that? I know we have a bunch of bills that we write off, correct?
We do, and some of those write-offs are because our charges are $800, but Medicare is only going to pay $300. So we know that particular run is going to generate, and I'm just making up figures there, that particular run is going to generate a write-off, but we can't do the charges. It's just the charges are what they are. It doesn't matter what the insurance is, but Medicare and TennCare, they pay what they pay, and that's just what it is.
Sure, and the reason I'm getting to this is revenues for the year is $23,138,000. So is that money going to be the $300 instead of the $800? Do you see where do you understand my
So,
question?
so if you look at the line there, 43,120 patient charges, I net out, we take into account that Medicare is only going to pay a certain amount. We take into account we conservatively budget that line net of the bad debt collections. And let me give you an example. So for example, last year we collected 10.3 million, but the budget last year was 10 million, so we collected a little over 300,000. So we conservatively budget that line net of the bad debts, and then our billing agency takes care of tracking down those bad debts and when to write those off, and they keep track of what are past due 30 days, what are past due 60 days. That our TPA, third-party administrator, keeps track of that. But we conservatively budget this line to take into account that, so that we know, or we feel fairly confident that we're going to hit the 23,138 in total budget there.
So the $10,500,000 that you are putting in the budget, and you're basing that would be an increase from 10.3. So you're anticipating that there'll be a little bit of increase in revenue.
Yes, and if you remember, it came before budget. It'll go before commission tomorrow night. This includes a proposed rate increase for the ambulance service department, and I believe, and the director can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've raised since 2019.
Correct.
And so that increase of, I believe, $500,000 there from over last year's budget includes the anticipated rate increase being approved tomorrow night. And I believe it was approved at both public safety and budget previously.
Thank you.
There's a lot to cover here. I'm going to give you a few more minutes. While y'all are looking at that, I've got a question too I'm going to throw out, and it's got to do with maybe, this is something that would involve the mayor and also the fire departments there. Currently, if there's a medical call dispatched, what happens in that case, Brian, is that, of course, your folks are dispatched, and I assume whatever unit is closest, if the station nearest or that would normally be called is busy elsewhere, the next closest unit would be called. How exactly are you working at? And before I let you start on that, the reason I'm asking is the fire department is also responding to medical calls. And I have a concern with that. I don't have a concern with them helping and doing medical calls when needed, but on a routine medical call, I question running an engine, 48-foot engine in somebody's driveway when they call for an ambulance. So if you explain how our dispatch system works while they're looking at that, please.
So when a 911 call comes in the county, it just depends on what dispatch center it hits. So if it goes to Murfreesboro and it's a Murfreesboro call, they will push the card to our dispatch. Our dispatch will pick the closest unit, the computer will pick the closest unit and send them. So in the city of Murfreesboro Fire, they're dispatched on almost every medical call within the city. And I would think the same is true for, and Chris may be able to correct me, but the same holds true for in the county and Laverne. Smyrna is starting to come on board with the first responder program, but it's in the infancy stages with them.
Question, is this 3.25% adjustment to the pay table, is that helping you be competitive to retain your good members, or are you losing some to other departments?
It definitely helps. As you've heard me talk numerous times here, paramedic jobs are pretty simple to find, and everybody's trying to one-up the next person. You know, a few years ago, we did some changes with the schedule, and it was fantastic until other people started doing the same thing. So our starting pay, our 0 to 10-year pay is what really kills us. because we're not competitive in that market with other counties. But as you progress through it, the step plan is helpful because a lot of the other places that we're competing against, they all make the same money, whether they're 6 months or 20 years. So, but they are paying rather well.
That'll ease the pain a little bit, right?
It helps. So normally, if we keep them 5 years, we're usually in pretty good shape, right, Sonia? 5 to 7 is that range.
Thank you.
I have a question for the director. On an average, in a day's time on ambulance runs, how many times would you say the firemen that come assist your people in loading a patient that they might have difficulty loading without them?
It's hard to put a percentage on that, but if you were to ask our crews, they would say 100% of the time they're helpful.
Reason I ask that, I've had them come to my parents' homes, and the two that come would had a difficult challenge without the help of the fire department. Now I've got a further question since we're talking about this, and this may not even be possible, but you can tell me one way or the other. The firemen can do everything the ambulance can do except transport close.
They have the same training, as our paramedics and advanced EMTs.
All right, you have trouble filling your positions.
We have 12 vacancies.
Is there any way to cross-train a fireman so they could fill in a paramedic's job if they were willing to do the work?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The reason the line of question that I was coming up with is, do we need more paramedics than what we're budgeting if we're having to run fire to help cover? And, you know, that's why I'm bringing this up. You know, there's a whole lot of difference in running a almost $2 million apparatus on every run and running thousands of miles a year on a truck to go to a medical call versus how many calls you have to fire. And, you know, my question would be, if we're going to continue to do that, do we need to get a different type vehicle to let the firemen run, kind of like the old emergency 911? You remember those guys were dispatching pickups, and, you know, they weren't running engines. You know, this ladder truck that the fire department's asking for, why I keep saying, are you going to run that on medical calls, is the cost of these machines is so expensive, and you're running the wheels off of it going to a non-fire call is what my concern is. You know, do we need to look at funding a different type rescue apparatus or something of that means? Mayor, you want to comment? So.
Yeah, I do. I want to ask Brian, Chairman P. and Commissioner Piercy bring up a good point. With our new public health and safety buildings, in all cases, we have both fire and emergency management services located in the same building. When we get a 911 call dispatched, would both the fire and the EMS out of that particular public safety building respond to the same call? And if not, how is it determined who is dispatched to that call?
So they would if it was in their area with the ambulance.
Because ambulance does transport in all cases.
And we cover the whole county.
Right.
So if, you know, depending on how stacked up the calls were, the unit from Las Casas, I mean, earlier today they were out in Christiana making a call.
Right. So I can hypothetically, I can see a situation if there was a serious automobile accident on Highway 96, you don't know when you get there whether it's going to require extraction equipment, which would be fire, right? The fire rescue, they would do that. You don't have the resources to do that kind of vehicle extraction, correct? but you won't know till you get there. Would that be accurate, or would you know on based on the nature of the 911 call?
No, if it's a motor vehicle accident, the ambulance and a fire department will be dispatched, because you can only take what you get over the phone with a grain of salt, right? So you don't know till you know.
Okay, thank you.
And that's not what I'm questioning. What I'm questioning is, if you get a non-emergency medical call, you know, do you need a fire engine? I would say not. And currently, I think we're dispatching regardless. And part of the reason I'm bringing this up, you know, is personal experience. The other part is, I've gotten calls from some of our medical facilities complaining about fire engines coming up when they're transporting a patient from one facility to another. Say they're moving somebody out to a care center or moving them to Nashville. Next thing they know, they got a 40-foot ladder truck sitting in front of their building with the sirens blasting. So that's part of the reason for the questioning. And then two, again, do we need to look at a different apparatus for doing that kind of operation? Commissioner Serino.
This is not a question. I believe I mentioned to the director one time or two occasions. The member in my district, called the ambulance. She said, thanks them because they got here on time very fast. They appreciate so much.
Thank you, sir.
And let me get us back on track. I've kind of distracted us actually from this budget, so I want to get back on track on looking at the budget. But Commissioner Irvin, you're recognized.
Yeah, it has to do with the budget. The pay, I guess presumably lower pay at the early part, more pay at the after a few years. Is that am I understanding the structure?
Some of it's correct, and some of the places that we compete with, they may not have that structured pay plan like we do. So I know one of our neighboring counties, they increase their pay considerably for their paramedics, but that's the same for if they've been there for a year or 25 years, they're making the same money. Whereas here, you're kind of rewarded with your longevity because you're further along in the step plan.
I'm sure these decisions were made long ago. I'm just trying to understand quite the rationale. I kind of get it, but I guess we're trying to keep folks around, and then once we've got them, they stay. Is that the theory?
We'd like to do that, yes. I'll answer that for them, and that's every
okay,
department. That's not just here.
Then the question is it successful? I mean, is it? What are the metrics look like?
I'm going to ask Sonia to speak to that first, Mayor, then you be recognized. But
I'm just, again, trying to.
Go ahead.
So the step plan was, the county's had several different step plans before I came and since I've came. So we do try to make sure that we continue to increase the pay table with what we call cost of living increases. That's why we come to the commission each year asking for that, because if we don't continue, we have to do a cost of living increase to the table every year or we get behind. We're still behind based on our last survey, even with this cost of living increase, and we were going to discuss that with you after the budgets were presented. We went with an initial recommendation that we felt like one that we could meet with the current budget. But if this body were to say, where do we need to be? Well, it needs to be more. I'll just tell you, we need to increase in some positions need a larger increase than others. And one of those would be in our ambulance service, our paramedics and our advanced EMTs need some additional monies. To speak to what Brian's talking about, some of the entities will do a flat rate. There's several counties, and I've never understood how they can keep people. They pay everybody the same, just like you said, for their patrol officers, their firefighters, their ambulance. Everybody in their public safety makes the same rate, regardless if they've been there 1 week or 30 years, they're making the same. For us, we're trying to recognize those years of service as longer that they stay around. A lot of the other entities also don't have a step plan. After 10, 14 years, you're topped out and you don't get anything else unless there's a cost of living increase. So the county wants to recognize that we want our employees to stay around, so we have extended our step plan in order to show that we value those employees who are staying with us longer. So the issue is getting them through that first bit up until the first, past the 5 or 10 year mark, and then we're comparable or better in some respects than other entities. We do offer one benefit that several don't offer, which is our pension plan, but others are going to that now. So it's just we just seem to be a few steps behind every year, and even with our best efforts of trying to catch up. So I hope that answers your question.
Mayor Carr, you're recognized. All right, you're good? Okay. Sonia, since you brought that up, sometime in the near future, if you've done a current survey, I don't know if you have this year, I'd like to see that come to us.
We had planned, I believe, on the 20th next week, once we got done with all the department's budget, Sonia was going to present. She did work with a third-party company to do a pay plan across the entire county. And as she said, we initially went ahead and built in, when we worked with the mayor on his recommendation, something we thought we could afford and get the budget balanced. And we thought we did the most we could without having to come and talk about some additional funding or some more complicated decisions that would have to be made. And so that kind of correlated with the raises that the elected officials were getting mandated by the state. Of course, theirs are capped at 5, even if the state, I think the average raise was 12 or 13%. Last year as a state employee, the average raise was 13%. And so we did the best we could to keep up with all the circumstances for the initial budget proposal. But I think the plan was for Sonia to present that third-party plan at the end of next Monday on the 20th, after y'all have heard all the budgets.
Mayor, you're recognized.
Yeah, and again, we're back to how this budget impacts future budgets. One of the things that Brian and Michael and I talked about was the need with those 12 open positions. Brian, I want you to correct me, but we only allow credit for 5 years.
Correct.
And we're competing with other surrounding municipalities and counties that give credit for at least 10 years. And so there's a kind of a donut hole in our pay plan, especially with EMS, that's being shown up regularly with open positions, and it's because we don't provide credit for 10 years experience. One of the things we wrestled with in this budget very early on was, do we do a 5% or do we move to a 10-year credit? Michael and I found out pretty quick we couldn't do both. We wanted to do both because we needed to catch up, especially with this department. And after consulting with Mr. Gaither, we settled on the 5% with the understanding that at some point in time, we've got to fill that donut hole to 10 years of experience. Did I say that accurately, Brian?
Yes, sir. And Commissioner, we had an employee last month, the month before last. He worked here for 33 years, and he left here to go to a surrounding county and started out making more than we paid him after 33 years.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Phillips.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. Sonia, you can also kick in. Some of these comparisons that are happening right now are not government to government. They're government to private
correct
services that can probably pay a lot more than we can as government. So the individual that Brian's talking about did not go to another county and go to work for that county. They went work to a private person,
hospital-based system
that can pay more than we can, for profit, okay? And we're not in that business to make a lot of money. So we're not comparing apples to apples 100% of the time.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So to say that we're underpaying as opposed to other counties is not entirely accurate. I'm not saying that these guys are overpaid. I'm saying that they probably are underpaid, but we're not comparing apples to apples a lot of times. These employees may be going to work for another company and not for another county.
Well, and in this instance, it is a county service that is a kind of a strange makeup, but it is a hospital-based system. but it is a county 911 service.
But the hospital offsets the salaries. The county puts in the pot, but the hospital also ups the ante in order to get those people.
It's a strange makeup.
Okay, let's get back to Brian's budget and kind of keep us online. I'm sorry I caused that distraction on there. Are there any changes any of the committee members would like to make on this budget or any further questions for Brian? I have a lot, but I'll call him at home, so. Hearing none, I'm going to say that we will accept, excuse me, Michael.
I just want to reiterate, if something, Brian's budget will have to be revised if the increase in rates do not pass tomorrow night's county commission meeting. I just wanted to make that statement so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, he did state that increase that has been approved by our committee and by public safety is cooked into this budget. Thank you, Mike. Having said that, hearing no recommendations for changes, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation on the ambulance service fund. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next is the sheriff's office. Looks like he's going to keep us busy for a while.
Good evening. I'm Steve Spence, the Deputy Chief with the Sheriff's Office. We agree with Mayor Carr and Director Smith's recommendation. On the Sheriff's Office side, we are requesting a school resource officer. It's for the Beatty Elementary project, which is projected to open August of 2025. Go over a few line items that's got an increase on the Sheriff's Office side. 307 communications, increase of $27,100. It's due to extra internet lines for our deputies out in the field for their laptops and connection back to the Sheriff's Office. 334 maintenance agreements, increase $125,000, just due to the increase in the maintenance agreements we have at the Sheriff's Office and the costs. 350 internet connection, increase of $36,000. We're adding a Comcast and an AT&T failure line. If one of those lines fail to the Sheriff's Office, the other one's going to pick up immediately. We don't lose communications with other agencies or our deputies out in the field. 431, the law enforcement equipment, increase of $20,000. This is the need to replace some older equipment and the cost of the product that we're seeing. 451, uniforms, an increase of $50,000 due to the higher prices and replacing older uniforms. 499, other supplies and materials, increase of $32,000. Increase in getting more material for recruitment and updating older materials that we hand out to the citizens. 718 motor vehicles, increased to $231,694. Requesting the 25 marked patrol SUVs, 4 unmarked patrol SUVs, 5 CID vehicles. Last year with the personnel that we received for the budget, we didn't request all the cars that's needed, so this is going to be requesting some cars for new employees last year and replacing high mileage cars.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And I don't necessarily know if this question is for you or the mayor, but our community, I believe 2 years ago, we had a problem with our maintenance contract on our telephones that we had bought. Do you remember that? And we had to enter into an agreement with the carrier. Is that price stable or is it going up?
So obviously, Chairman Harris, as we bring new vehicles online, we have to, it's the Motorola contract I believe you're referring to?
Yes.
Thank you. And so as we bring new patrol vehicles online and add new officers, obviously we need to equip not just sheriff, but fire, EMS, and first responders with the radios. As a matter of fact, we just got through in purchasing committee yesterday, I believe it was, awarding Motorola the state a state contract for that. With regard to the maintenance contract, I'm pleased to announce that Chris Clark has negotiated a time frame where we're going to move the maintenance payment of that contract from June 1 May 1 to August 1 to coincide with our budget year. And so Motorola has given a verbal approval for that change of about 3 months to more coincide with our budget cycle. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I know they go up every year, so I
No,
didn't
sir.
see it in this budget.
The maintenance contract is a stable price. Now, it's reflective of the equipment, it's not reflective of the additional equipment we may be bringing on, but it is a stable price. And I believe the term of that maintenance contract was 9 years.
And that's all the increase on the sheriff's office side, on line items on this one.
Yeah, we paid.
Which line do you put that? Which line do you have that maintenance contract under? 336?
That's not in the sheriff's office budget.
Oh, which budget is that in?
So the Motorola contract and the Motorola purchases for most of the radios are all in EMA's budget.
Okay.
Or emergency management, that'd be under Chris Clark.
Yes, sir.
So you got about 670,000 increase, and 500,000 of that is vehicles.
Yes, sir.
Then you have one person added. Quick question on the personnel. I know we've got a new school and we're adding the SRO there.
Yes, sir.
I'd had some questions about the size of some of our middle schools being very large, possibly going to 2.
Yes, sir.
Y'all have any comment on that, or have you looked at it? Any thoughts?
Yes, just this year we added an extra one for all the high schools. We have sergeants that rotate out, but we have discussed adding more SROs to the middle schools. Like you said, due to the size, we was going to look at it for next year to add those.
You got, I know we have 2 of the largest middle schools in the state of Tennessee in this county, so that's why I'm kind of bringing that up.
Yes, sir.
But you are looking at it. Have you discussed this with the school superintendent?
Yes, sir. And we're seeing more activity too in the middle schools like we do the high schools.
Okay. But you're looking at adding that next year possibly?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the committee on the sheriff's office budget? Any additions, subtractions, suggestions? Hearing none, I'm going to write this one down as accepted. The mayor's proposal, and we'll move to special patrols.
Yes, sir. Special patrol is lake duty. It's where Corps engineer pays us to actually patrol the boat ramps in the summer. We raised this hourly rate from $40 an hour to $50. The total budget for that is $57,390.
Any questions? Chief Spence. Changes on this patrol budget. Hearing none, we're also going to accept the mayor's recommendation for the special patrols budget. And then we'll be moving on to the administration of sex offender registry.
Yes, sir. This pays for a detective to register to keep up with all the sex offenders in the county. It's $106,979. It covers office supplies, other charges that they have to pay TBI for, backgrounds in their salary.
Only increase there is basically the pay increase we've talked about that everybody gets.
Yes, sir.
Any questions from the committee on the sex offender budget? Hearing none, we're also going to accept the mayor's recommendation for the sex offender registry budget and move on to jail.
Yes, sir. No additional personnel on this budget. Some line items that's increasing: 334 maintenance agreements, increase of $59,000, increased agreements and the costs. 335 maintenance repair of service of building, increase of $50,000 due to aging building and older equipment. 354 transportation of other than students. This is our out-of-state pickup prisoner interdiction pickups, increase of $25,000. 399 other contracted services. This is Dr. Rudd's per his contract, $210,367 increase.
How much was that again?
The increase is 210,367, a total of 7,350,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And what was that for? I'm sorry, I couldn't look.
For Dr. Ruther, medical care of the inmates is per his contract.
Where he's providing people for the facility also, but.
Yes, sir. 422 food supplies, increase of 300,000. This is due to increase in pricing and the increase of population. Right now, we're paying $30,600 a week for food. 499 other supplies and materials, an increase of 10,000 due to the increase of repairs and the costs. 707 building improvements, increase of 50,000. Again, an increase in the building repairs and the equipment.
Which line item did you say that was again?
707 building improvements.
You said there was an increase. I'm showing, well, the amended budget, there's a decrease. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and that's all the increase for the jail side, besides salaries.
Chairman, that decrease is a decrease from the amended budget.
Right, and I caught that after thank you. Any personnel, you said that there was only one added on the sheriff's office, any on the jail side?
No, sir.
Have you got all your openings filled?
No, sir. We're down. We have several open in the jail. We have 35 openings in the detention. And we have 3 of those in backgrounds, hoping to get them hired soon.
Mr. Chairman?
You're recognized.
Could you characterize the 35 openings? I mean, how many of what character?
They're all detention officers.
Oh, all detention officers?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if you wonder why you have a overtime budget, now you know. Besides the pay increase and the medical services increase, food supply, that's the big hitter.
Yes, sir.
Committee, any questions for Chief? Suggestions or questions for the sheriff? He's sitting back there anticipating you call him up.
I've got one question.
Seriously.
Jail detention, right?
Yes, sir.
Your people are in pods, is that correct?
The inmates, yes, sir.
How many's in a pod?
14, I believe. How many people's in the pod? Inmates. Okay.
Could you hear that? If not, I'll ask him to come up and get a mic.
The males is 50 inmates per pod, 4 pods per floor, and then 28 per pod in the female pods.
Okay. Where you've got 50 inmates in a pod, what would be the average number of employees that you have to maintain that 50 people?
One or 2 on each floor roams the floors of the inmates, and the rest of the staff are covering other floors and the towers.
Okay. But overall, 1 or 2 will manage 50 inmates?
Yes, sir.
Very well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Recognize.
Mr. Chairman, so is the 35 vacancies, is that a pay level issue, or do we pay comparable to other counties, and
It's a pay level issue. Sumner County starts their deputies off at $51,000 in the jail. Hamilton County, $50,000. Robertson, 51, Montgomery, 51. We start off our deputies in detention, 42,750, and up to 5-year experience, 45,878.
So we're kind of doing the same thing. Is that the theory?
And I think the pay study that you'll see when Sonia presents it, and Sonia, correct me, I believe we were like at least 9 to 12% in that range on average. So,
Again, I assume this will be part of your report coming up, Sonia.
That is a massive binder.
old school paper.
Use your mic, please.
So it gives us a percentage. So what I did with the survey that we have, and of course we'll talk about this later, but just to give you a highlight, plugged in, I created a tab to where I can plug in a percentage of increase to our table, and it tells me if we're still behind or if we're at where we're supposed to be. Even with the 3.25%, there are many positions within the sheriff's office that are still 10% or greater that need additional monies added. So like a detention officer is at 90%. So based on the entities, and so this body, the budget committee approved who we used to do our surveys with. Y'all did that last year, and we're using those same entities. And based on those entities, which is our surroundings, all of the ones that he named plus others, it's saying that our detention officers are at 90% even with the 3.25% lift. And so that just tells you that they're still, behind where we need to be to stay competitive.
And when did you say you'd be bringing this report to us?
We had talked about doing it next Monday after all the departments got done, so that way that y'all could have heard all the departments, what their issues were, what they're not, and then that way Sonia could give y'all an overarching view after and kind of compound on anything or elaborate on anything pay-wise or pay scale that any departments had issues with. And so that was kind of our thought process.
And if you could tell me in advance how you would kind of like to receive this information, like how you want me to explain it to you, because I mean, obviously you're not going to want me to read off 300 and something positions. Are you wanting the positions that are more than 10% below where they should be? Are you wanting people 10% and greater? How are you wanting to receive that information? Are you wanting the highlights by department? Just it'd be helpful for me to not belabor information that you don't want, if you kind of have an idea what you'd want me to bring back to you.
Mayor.
Yeah, I do want to chime in here because this is an extremely important topic. I think as a suggestion, of course, this body can decide for themselves. They don't need me to help. But I would want to make sure this body knew the most egregious disparities, Sonia, and where those positions were and what departments those were, because that might, and I want to know if that correlates to the open positions. Example, with the jail. We've got a number of open positions in the jail. Are those open positions reflective in a gross disparity with regard to the survey? With EMS, you see what I'm saying? So I would imagine there's going to be some correlations there or causation, but if you could start there, or as a suggestion, start there, and I'm sure from there the committee will take us in the appropriate direction.
So, Mr. Chairman, what if this survey comes back and we're grossly behind? That's got to affect this budget. So what do we do? Do we give them more money? Do we give them more credit? What do we do? Because I guarantee you that thing's going to come back and it's going to say we're behind. And I think we know that. So my question is, we got a balanced budget right now, but this could be a problem. Could it not?
It most certainly could, and I think what Michael and Sonia have suggested is the proper course of action, and that's why, and the timing of why we're bringing it, because it does give this body some latitude to make those decisions, okay? And so Sonia has kind of briefed me on that salary study, so I'm not completely ignorant of what's in there. I wouldn't say there are gross adjustments that needs to be made, but there are some things that this body needs to attend to, if not this budget cycle, in the very, very near future. And what she's telling us is she's giving us a roadmap, I think is what you're doing, of how and what and when we need to do that. If this body decides we want to start taking some of those actions now, then Michael and I need to go back to the drawing board a little bit. But that's for this body to determine. And what do we do now? What do we do next year and in the following year? Because we do have some catching up to do, Chairman.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I think we're in the market. I don't think we're like so far, because I think we had major raises about 2 or 3 years ago where we raised everybody up. So, but I am concerned that how many positions you got open?
35.
35 positions, a lot of positions. And so I'm looking at, if we're in excess of $10,000 per position, that's $350,000. Is that something, Mayor, that we should be looking at? Is that something that we should start maybe trying to look and where we can save money and try to offset that?
Well, I think so, but until she brings you the study and we have an opportunity for her to just point out those areas that are most egregious and the critical nature of their function. I know that PAWS is having problems, as you heard last night, with enforcement officers. We heard from Bishop that he's having problems with attendance because that's why we're converting part-time to full-time. So I think Sonia's going to give you a very broad look at this, and we could begin in those departments or those jobs within those departments that are suffering the most. That will be, in my opinion, the low-hanging fruit that we need to address first, but obviously that's a decision for this body to make.
Sonia, you're recognized.
And I'm not sure if this will make a difference one way or another, but it might help out from a budgetary, and I'm not sure I can have it done by the 20th, but I'll do my best. You know, where we've talked about the 10 years experience credit, it might, I know that the sheriff's office would be helpful to them if they could bring people in that's got 10 years experience that could be more well-versed in the field and the training that they need. So I had started calculating some of the departments. What would it look like if we've actually gone through the applications in my department and created what it would look like if they had 10 years experience credit as opposed to where they're at now if we added that in. So if I can get it finished, I will bring that as maybe an offset, you know, that says, okay, you know, do we leave the 3.25 for, you know, everybody, and then we do the 10, because a lot of times the people in law enforcement, public safety in general, I'll just say it in general, they go from organization to organization. Whoever's paying the most this month, that's where they're going to go. So they move around a lot is what I've seen historically in public safety. And so it may be that if we did the 10 years experience credit with the lift to the table, it might be able to help us attract and retain some people, because once they get to our tenure and keep going up, then we're kind of in the sweet spot for them to stay. So I'll look and see what that would look like, and I will tell you that while this says 10% underpaid, it does 10% variance is where it says we're at 90% of the overall. That doesn't mean if we add 10% lift to the table that it's going to take that to 100%. This is a calculation based on the overall variable. So I do want to study that. You know, if it says 90%, you're at 90%, that doesn't mean adding 10. I know that sounds contrary, but I played it with the numbers and it doesn't do that. So I'll bring you a snapshot of kind of the worst case scenarios and see what the cost would be associated with that.
Mr. Chairman.
If I could, Chairman.
Let me
Go ahead.
recognize the sheriff first, and we'll come back to you.
One other thing I want to add, and of course, is hearing what the ambulance service said tonight. One of the other phenomena that we're starting to see now is our senior employees are moving to the state, and recently I've lost 3 to the state. What we're facing with there is they're able to carry their TCRS with them to the state. I've got one senior detective supervisor that we just lost going to the state, sitting down and talking with him. He's getting a $12,000 increase to go to them. He's taking his TCRS with him. They have a 25-year retirement, so he's going to be able to retire 5 years sooner than he can with us. And so basically, and then of course his higher 5 at what he's going to is going to be higher for his retirement. So this is another thing that we're starting to see where we are losing to other governmental agencies because of the type of retirement. One of the things we're looking at the city, I think they have increased, and we're being told that they're getting ready to give another 15% increase to their patrol. In addition to that, they did have 8-hour shifts. They've now gone to 10-hour shifts, which matches what we were doing. And we understand, although I don't know how true it is or not, but we understand they're looking at going to TCRS. So if that happens, then I've got another agency within our backyard that we're competing with for people. So while we were losing to outside agencies, not agencies, but outside private sector, we're now starting to see it shift and go to other governmental agencies. So that's another kind of piece into the factor that we've got to look at. Basically, I mean, sitting down with him, all I could tell him, I wish you the best. I don't have anything I can, counter with. So, so we're starting to see that in the state. Of course, obviously, I don't think we'll ever match them, but honestly, they've raised so high now that's kind of hard for us to match. Davidson County, their sheriff's office on detention, 61,000 is what they're starting. We're in the 40s, so I just lost one today going that way. In addition to the 35 detention officers, I've got 17 vacancies in patrol. So it's hitting us all the way around quite a bit. Anyway.
Thank you, Sheriff. Commissioner Irvin, you're recognized.
Just a quick question. The plus 10 you're talking about, does that mean 10 years to the pension, or is that 10 years credit with pay up?
Use your mic, please.
So let me add this. So right now, if you're a director and below, I think you can bring 5 years of experience. And if you're director level and above, you can bring 10 years. And Sonia, correct me if I'm wrong. That's bringing that experience. So for example, if you worked at another post-certified agency and you were coming as a deputy, you would come in at whatever grade was applicable, but you could only come in at a step 5. On our pay scale. We only recognize the 5, even if you may have 10 years of experience. If you're a director and below, I think is the current policy as it stands. It's been like that for several years.
So this is purely a pay table calculation.
Yes.
Yes.
And I want to correct something. Our patrol officers that are certified officers that are coming in it's almost 51,000. So we're not starting them at 40,000. I mean, if somebody comes in off the street and they have no experience, and then we pay to send them to a school, they make a little bit less. It's 6% less, but they're starting at 50,669 as a step 1 if they come in as a certified officer. Most certified officers are not going to come here to step 1. They're going to come here to step 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're going to make more than, a step 5 patrol officer.
54,377.
Is that what it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see. Yes, that's correct. So that I trust but verify. So while it's not 60,000, it's not 40,000. So I just
Thank you. That does make me feel better. I don't know about anybody else sitting here, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be addressed. But let's get back online on actually the items on the jail's budget. Are there any changes any of the committee members would like to suggest? If not, I'm ready to go ahead and accept the mayor's proposal and move to our next step. And not hearing that is the case, we're moving on and accepting the jail's budget as the mayor has recommended it. Next issue is the Special Purpose-DEA Fund.
This special purpose is the increase of $20,000, so the total of this budget is $40,000. We increased their confidential line item by $20,000.
You'll see the small print at the bottom, no property tax in this fund. Any questions for Chief on this budget? Hearing none, we're going to accept the Special Purpose DEA Fund and move to the Drug Fund.
The Drug Fund, we're increasing their overtime $150,000 up to $200,000. And the overall line items total will be $775,000. Where I've came throughout the year raising line items, asking for more money, we added more money into their line items to try to prevent from asking for more money during the year.
This is also a confidential fund, is that correct?
Yes, it's all drug fund. It's no tax dollars.
Again, are there any questions from the committee or suggestions for change? Pretty cut and dried here. Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and accept the mayor's recommendation for the drug fund, and we'll move then to traffic control.
Traffic control, there's no increase. It's the same as last year, $25,000.
Traffic control, what all does that cover?
Covers the red lights out in the county and the maintenance of them.
Okay, I have a question for you. Where in your budget is the school crossing guards?
It's in the part-time salaries in the sheriff's office side.
Under the sheriff's office side?
Yes, sir.
I had just had a request, and that's something I may bring up later. I know I've looked at, and I've gotten a few calls on this from people that are doing that job for us.
Yes, sir.
And they're comparing what they're doing to what the city of Murfreesboro's doing. I think basically we're kind of apples and apples there. However, the city of Murfreesboro provides them uniforms. I don't know if that's something y'all have looked at or considered or what the cost would be, but I wanted to throw that out there as a suggestion, and maybe we can look at that.
We do provide them with uniforms, winter coats, gloves, reflective vests, so forth. The only thing we don't provide is the shoes, because some of them want special shoes, so they buy their own shoes. But everything else is provided for them.
So we are picking that up?
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you. Okay, any questions on the traffic control budget? Flat, no change. Any suggestions or changes? If not, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation on the traffic control budget and add that to our approved column. Other business. There is no other business tonight.
Thank you.
One of you guys change that up. Thank you, Chief. And we are adjourned.